focusing framework on the Green New Deal.
Green New Deal.
Environmental group called the Sunrise Movement. They call themselves the Sunrise Movement.
Bring it on, Brothers, because we have an activated sunrise revolution that's taking place.
We have 12 years to radically transform our economy and our society to stop this crisis and protect human civilization as we know it. We'll talk about it like that because that's what it is.
This is not about Republicans. This is not. About Renee. This is about humanity. That's why we demand a new Green Deal, and we demand it right now.
So, what would be a good start without a few technical difficulties? Good evening. My name is Dave Atkins. I serve on the Westwood Planning Board, and I'm a founder of the Charles River Green Coalition. Welcome to our Green New Deal Town Hall. I want to thank everyone here tonight for taking time out of their evening for this important issue. And I want to thank you for missing the first period of the Bruins game. We have a full program tonight. But before we get started, I want to briefly share why I'm involved in this. When I was a child, we lived in the country, and I played in the woods behind my house. I'd walk back through the pine trees down to a creek where I had a lot of time to think about my future. It was a future full of optimism and possibility. I dreamed of the life that I would have someday. My parents sacrificed to make that life possible. Daddy worked in the shipyard for 17 years until his union went on strike and the company broke the union. Then he took night classes in welding. He worked in a pulp mill and eventually worked in a chemical plant until the day he suffered a stroke and collapsed on the plant floor. Mama worked as a bank teller, a typist, and eventually in a nuclear power plant. They made it possible for me to come to MIT and get a great education. Their parents did even more. They grew up during the Great Depression. My grandfather was finishing his chemistry degree at William & Mary College when he had to drop out and go to work to support his new family. Their generation conquered the Great Depression, defeated the Nazis, and launched an era of growth and prosperity that enabled my parents to instill in me values of responsibility and a belief that anything was possible if we just worked hard enough. Now I'm a father. My wife and I have a good life with our kids in a town with great schools. We believed that we would be giving our kids the opportunity for an even better future. But are we? We can go for a hike in Lowell Woods or Wilson Mountain. We can admire the natural beauty around us, but we cannot ignore the unsustainable future that we are leaving our children. They'll have access to college, but what jobs will they have? What will they do for their children? Increasingly, I see a future of an uninhabitable earth, rife with conflict over resources and defined by the constraints of global warming. We've heard these warnings for years, and nothing seemed to matter, nothing seemed to make a difference. But then I saw hundreds of young people going door to door on Capitol Hill, not looking for a job like I did many years ago, but demanding action to save their future. I saw a 15-year-old girl stand up in Stockholm and expose the futility of inaction. And suddenly I saw people listening to them, people starting to listen. It's not enough to follow the patterns of our parents. It's time to look up from our daily work and realize if we fail to act today, all our sacrifice is for nothing, because the world we leave our children cannot support them. It's time to listen to the hopes and fears of our young people and ask ourselves, what are we doing to protect their future? It's time to demand action from our leaders to fix what is broken. It's time to take action ourselves and save the future for our children. Now, we're going to hear from some young people, some students tonight who are going to tell us about the Green New Deal. As soon as I can get this presentation back on here.
Welcome, everybody. We have the right to good jobs and a livable future. That's why we're here. Please turn to your neighbor for 30 seconds and tell them why you're here. All right, that's good. Thanks, guys. Thank you. First, we have a few questions. Have you found that there's more and more precipitation happening each year? Yes. How many of you have noticed way more hot days than there ever used to be? Yes. How many of you vacation to the Cape or know people who do? A couple of you. Has anyone noticed that there's been a sudden increase in shark sightings? Yes. A lot, yeah. Have you noticed beaches getting smaller and smaller? Yes. So that's just part of the climate crisis that we're facing today. And this is our agenda for what we're going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about the impacts of climate change on our planet today.
And we know who's responsible: fossil fuel billionaires and corrupt politicians.
Then we're going to introduce the Green New Deal, the first solution that finally scales to the scope of the problem that we're facing.
Finally, we'll tackle our plan to win.
All right. So, hi everyone, just a brief introduction. My name is Sarah Wasserman, and I just finished my first year at the University of Vermont in the Rubenstein School of the Environment and Natural Resources. And we wanted to start this presentation by going over what climate change actually is. That way, we can understand why the Green New Deal is such an effective piece of legislation towards addressing this problem. So, the term climate change is kind of like this blanket term that covers a very complex and nuanced set of causes and reactions that are happening on our planet right now. And it's very complicated, so much so that most scientists even struggle to really wrap our heads around it. So, I wanted to break it down into more digestible chunks so that we're all kind of on the same footing in terms of understanding what's going on our planet. So as we can see from these three pictures I've set up, I've broken it down into three different sections: the atmosphere, the earth, or the terrestrial aspect, and the water, or the aquatic aspect. Because when most people think about climate change, they first point to the atmosphere. And of course we know about gases like carbon dioxide and methane that are greenhouse gases causing the atmosphere to trap more heat and then create the greenhouse effect. That's why we're having such a rise in global temperatures. But there are other gases that are being emitted, such as chlorofluorocarbons and tropospheric ozone, that are causing significant damages to the atmosphere. And these damages have cascading effects onto everyone and every creature living on Earth. Not only is this the melting of glaciers and the rising of sea levels, but plants themselves have had to move northward in their distribution because of the increase in global temperatures. And that also brings me to other terrestrial aspects of how humans are impacting the Earth. One aspect of this is deforestation and the agriculture that is so often linked to it. And another part of deforestation is actually habitat fragmentation. As we build more roads, something that seems so simple, it can actually seriously disrupt the ecology of interior forest communities and result in edge effects that can really significantly decrease the health of the forest. And finally, one other terrestrial aspect that's just the tip of the iceberg is toxic waste. Toxic waste has a very important social justice component, but also from an environmental standpoint, it's poisoning the earth we live on. And also in terms of aquatic problems that we're facing, both in the ocean and in freshwater systems, there's ocean acidification, which happens when there's too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and it dissolves into the water. The ocean has this great buffer system. It's a bicarbonate buffer, and it helps to maintain the pH of the ocean at a level that's sustainable for marine life to thrive. However, as we put more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, more is dissolving into the ocean, and it really disrupts this buffer, making the ocean far more acidic than it should be. This is not only detrimental to all marine life, but especially creatures like corals that use a compound called calcium carbonate to build their skeletons. So when more acid is in their environment, it literally eats away at their skeleton. And this is a serious problem since coral reefs are one of the greatest hotspots for biodiversity on the planet. For freshwater systems, I can definitely speak to this as the University of Vermont is right near Lake Champlain, and they are dealing with this problem of eutrophication, which is an excess of nutrients in the freshwater ecosystem. So when you have runoff, like when it rains and it flows down into the body of water, this can either be from agricultural or urban sources. It adds far more nutrients to the system than there should be. And then when you have more nutrients, you have more algae growth, and this produces the infamous algae blooms that are so toxic for humans and animals. However, this is only one part of the problem because when this algae dies, it creates an oxygen sink, literally suffocating the fish and animals swimming in the water as they swim in it. The reason I've talked about all of these issues is because the Green New Deal actively recognizes that humans are the cause of this. For so long it's been debated, are we causing it, are we not? At this point it's very clear that we are causing it, and that's why the Green New Deal is important, because it actively recognizes this. And instead of just going back and forth, debating the science, it focuses on the fact that yes, we're causing it, yes, we're the key factor, whether or not these problems would be happening at all without us, or to the extent they're happening without us. It recognizes this and then actively proposes ways to adapt to these problems or mitigate them so that we have a more sustainable future for our planet. So like I said, I'm studying environmental science. And one reason is because I'm really passionate about being outside and I really like nature. But another part of it is because while I have many different passions, I feel morally compelled to help preserve our planet for the future, and studying environmental science and using my skills for that purpose is the best way that I see to make sure our planet has a future for the generations to come.
Hello, I'll take the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Alexandra Vergara, and I'm currently taking a gap year and attending UNH in the fall. I grew up next to two different farms, an alpaca farm and a cow farm in the middle of nowhere, Connecticut, also known as Wellington, Connecticut. I grew up watching firsthand the symbiotic relationship we have with the earth. As we deal with the issues of climate change, the problems become more personal than just watching things slightly change. And you have that argument of, oh, well, it's only a little bit hotter, it's only a little bit colder. We have personal issues ourselves. And for me, I've had to ask myself whether or not I want to bring children into this world. And with that, if I do, what kind of world am I bringing children into? What will be left? And when I leave them, as many of you guys are parents, you understand that when your time comes, you want to make sure that your children are being left a successful life. And many of the people in our generation, we have to grapple with the question of not, am I going to be able to give my kids an education? Am I going to be able to afford a home for my kids? We have to ask ourselves, are our children going to be able to have breathable air? And that's scary for a lot of us.
Hi, my name is Anna. I'm a rising senior. I'm from Lincoln. And I'm terrified for what the world is going to look like when I grow up. I think one of the biggest questions that I often have to ask myself is how to best balance enjoying my childhood and being a happy kid, and also taking enough action so that I can have a successful adult life and have children who will have successful lives as well. I don't want to wake up in 40 years and realize that I wasn't doing everything that I could to save the planet while we still had time.
Hi, my name is Dedham. I'm from Walpole High School, and I'm also a rising senior. And I see all this awareness on social media and the news of we need to save our planet, we have 12 years, we need to take action, but reposting videos isn't going to change anything. We know that it's real, we know that the world is headed to a dark place, and without policy change, nothing is going to change for real. And we know who is responsible for us asking these questions. Fossil fuel CEOs and corrupt politicians. And they achieve this through 3 tactics. 1, deceive the people. 2, buy out politicians. And 3, consolidate power through the government. First off, they deceive the people. To highlight the issue, we're going to look at ExxonMobil, the largest private oil company in the world. They knew.
From 1978 ExxonMobil internal documents, it can be seen that they said that man has a time window of 5 to 10 years before the need for hard decisions regarding changes in energy strategies might become critical.
And then they denied. CEO Lee Raymond argued against Kyoto Protocol in 1997. There's a lot we really don't know about how climate will change in the 21st century and beyond. We need to understand the issue better, and fortunately, we have time. It is highly unlikely that the temperature in the middle of the next century will be significantly affected whether policies are enacted now or 20 years from now. And then after this, they deflect responsibility.
This is a quote from Andrew Warren, a British campaigner in 2005. Raymond is no longer seeking to deny the science behind climate change. Instead, he simply predicts an endless rise in the demand for the fossil fuels his company sells and maintains that there's nothing that can be done to alter that.
These are Charles and David Koch. Their business is oil refinery, coal-fired power plants, oil and gas pipelines, which I'm sure that you've heard of the gas pipelines. A couple years ago, we had the Standing Rock Reservation issue, and other coal and oil-heavy industries. The original source of wealth comes from their father, Fred Koch, who made and built these refineries, and they have a combined net worth of over $100 billion. I know that for some people it's hard to conceptualize numbers like that. 1 billion seconds is 32 years. They have $100 billion. That's a lot of time and a lot of money. So first step, deceive people. And then 2, buy out politicians. This is a graph, and the reason we're showing this graph is for you guys to understand that this is not a party issue. It is not a red issue, it is not a blue issue. If you have seen specific politicians from certain parties talking about this issue, I promise you it is not just a Democratic, Republican, Independent, Tea Party, etc. issue. You have Democratic candidates that are corrupt, you have Republican candidates that are corrupt, you have, beyond the party lines, this is an issue. And then 3, consolidate power within the government. This is Mike Pompeo, our current Secretary of State. After his election to the House 8 years ago, he was referred to, very lovingly, as the Koch brothers congressman. While representing Kansas, which is the home of Koch Industries in Wichita, he introduced legislation to prevent the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, from enforcing a rule to improve the safety of America's most dangerous chemical plants. It is also worth mentioning that Pompeo received $80,000 in donations from the Koch brothers, which made him the top recipient of donations from the company in 2010. And this is a company whose owners have a combined net worth, once again, of over $100 billion. So this slide is depicting the fact that this is not just an oil refinery issue. Most major companies have a hand in this corruption. Companies that you may know just from seeing a logo. Facebook, Google, Amazon. You might know their CEOs. You've seen them on the news. These politicians and these businessmen have a habit of wanting to seem relatable to the people. They want to seem like they are just like us, despite the fact that they have a lot more money than us and a lot more power than us. And that results in the fact that we are always going to be at a different level than them, and we have to hold these people accountable. And the 1% is the 1% for a reason. We are the 99%, and we have more power than we think we do. So we're spending hundreds of billions supporting an industry that's destroying our climate and buying out our politicians. Sounds like a bad idea.
So all of this brings us to the Green New Deal, which is the very first plan that scales to the scope and the urgency we're facing with the climate crisis. So the policy details are still being worked out, and we're all part of that process. But the broad strokes are laid out in a joint congressional resolution that's been put forth by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey. So what the Green New Deal says is that over the next 10 years, it will engage every American from every community and to join in an emergency effort that moves our entire society to 100% clean and renewable energy. For any person who needs work, it will guarantee a family-sustaining job building this new economy. For the workers most impacted by these changes and for the communities most vulnerable to pollution and climate change, the Green New Deal will deliver a transition that leaves no one behind. Make no mistake, this will be the biggest thing we've done since FDR's original New Deal, or the remaking of the economy during World War II. The Green New Deal may be expensive and expansive, but the alternatives are unthinkable. A loss of functional human society as we know it. We intend to treat the climate change like the existential crisis that it is. When we faced the emergency of the Great Depression, the New Deal responded with what FDR called bold, persistent experimentation. The government created dozens of innovative programs for relief, recovery, and reform. They distributed aid for the unemployed, and they regulated finance, industry, and agriculture. They created the Social Security system for old age and unemployment insurance, and protected union rights for the first time. When we faced the emergency of global fascism in World War II, the government took the reins of the economy. They mandated private industry to produce wartime goods. Auto plants were completely converted for the effort. Wartime agencies established rationing and price controls and put limits on corporate profits. FDR even seized control of companies that refused to cooperate. Ordinary people shared, sacrificed, and supported one another. A large majority of households grew their own victory gardens, which produced over 40% of the country's vegetables in 1943. So, don't forget, as a society, when we decide to take on the crisis with everything we've got, we can pull off the unimaginable. And if this isn't another one of those moments, then what possibly could be? The fact is, climate change is an even greater threat than the Great Depression or World War II. It risks not only our lives, but also the future of our society. It threatens the very existence of collective life on this planet. Climate change demands emergency action of the biggest and boldest kind we can muster, the kind that can only be led by the federal government. There's simply no other institution that can change the rules of the game on this great timeline. So, that explains the scale of the Green New Deal. What about the scope? Well, climate change is far from the only problem that we're facing, and you can't really isolate it from the other major emergencies in our society. Systemic racism is an urgent crisis. We have an economy and democracy that functions from the few who live from wealth, but not for the few, not for the majority who live from work. Inequality has skyrocketed, and crushing poverty remains a reality in this country. These crises are all connected. We've covered the fact that the same elites and the same economic and political system are to blame. The Green New Deal is going to take them on together. We can, and the Green New Deal must do it all. This right here is one of more than 200 town halls happening across the country, with thousands of young people gathering in our communities to learn about the Green New Deal. We may not have billions of dollars to spend on misinformation campaigns, but we're building a movement large enough to take on their agenda.
Let's talk about what that's going to look like. I'm going to walk you through 3 major ways the Green New Deal is going to change everything. For you, for friends, for family, and for every person living in this country. The Green New Deal won't just benefit the environment, it will change our society. Work will be different, the economy will operate on new principles, and everyday life will be transformed. Here's the first change: secure, fair, and meaningful work. Every town, county, and city will have to transform after the Green New Deal is implemented. We'll need people to build wind farms, solar installations, and smart grids, charging stations, electric bus lines, bullet trains, and affordable homes. Additionally, we have to retrofit and climate-proof so many buildings in the United States and upgrade and fortify all of our infrastructure. All these changes will create millions of jobs. We also need to grow healthy, sustainable food for every community in this country. Planting billions of trees will take carbon out of the air and return it to the ground where it belongs. Everything I just listed is all part of the Green New Deal, but that only scratches the surface. Those are all physical and technological changes. In order to truly fight climate change, we have to start caring about one another way more. Teaching, nursing, child and elder care, domestic and regenerative agricultural work. They are all examples of the lowest carbon parts of our economy and the ones we very need to expand. Unfortunately, the people who do so much of this work already, often women of color and migrants, are exploited and underpaid in this economy. Even though the wind and solar industries are exploding, these jobs are usually non-union, so they pay far less than the fossil fuel industry does. We can't trust the market to provide jobs that are green and good. If we want everyone to have a living wage that can support a family and has benefits like vacation time, personal leave, and a fair wage, then we have to do it ourselves. That's why a core component of the Green New Deal is a policy called the Job Guarantee. That's right, there's so much climate work to be done that the federal government can provide a job to any American who is willing to contribute to this transformation. Most work will remain in the private sector, but the federal job guarantee sets a floor for wages and benefits that employers must meet. If they do not meet those minimum standards, their workers will simply leave for the public options. The policy will especially lift up those with the worst deal in our economy: low-income workers, the disabled, people of color, migrants, and other groups. These communities have been through centuries of oppression, exclusion, and environmental injustice. They're the Americans who have done the least to cause global warming, and they're often hit first and worst by climate chaos. With the framework for the job guarantee, we can use the power of government to make sure that every American has a job and can contribute to this transition, and that the green jobs they have really are good jobs. We've talked a lot about how the government needs to lead, but does that mean that the Green New Deal is from the top down? No, this transition is a public undertaking in every sense of the word, big and small. It doesn't mean that elected officials and bureaucrats will do everything for us. We're going to put the economy under democratic control. That's the second way the Green New Deal will reshape this country. Only the federal government can set the framework and marshal the resources for change on this scale and at this speed. But even if we elect the ideal president in Congress, they don't know everything. Ultimately, the best judge of the success of our communities is us. Getting the Green New Deal right will take commitment and creativity from all of us. So we can't leave it to the government, but we can't do it without them. The Green New Deal has to be grounded in local democracy, and it has to be accountable to all of us. Now raise your hand if you've heard of the term energy democracy. It's when communities own and control their own electricity. That can mean a fully public system at the municipal level, or it could mean a local cooperative that buys and even produces its own power. The nearby town of Natick has recently implemented a system similar to this. Wind and solar are especially well suited to the cooperative model because they're smaller scale decentralized technologies. The power will be in the hands of the people, and the federal government can provide infrastructure to make it easy. The public, and especially marginalized communities, need a meaningful say in how the Green New Deal gets designed and implemented, and the ability to intervene when it goes astray. So the federal job guarantee, for example, will be funded from the top, but administered from the bottom. Local municipalities decide what gets done based on the needs and skills of that specific community. The congressional resolution also emphasizes the importance of community-defined projects and strategies. A Green New Deal must be developed through transparent and inclusive consultation, collaboration, and partnership with all of these communities. The democratic values of the Green New Deal bring us to our third and final theme. The Green New Deal builds a society based on radically different values, like cooperation, not competition. Rather than fueling endless consumption, which keeps us isolated, plugged in, and stressed out, the Green New Deal prizes community and solidarity. It prizes all of our needs and dreams. Things like healthcare, education, affordable housing, and meaningful work will be treated as universal rights rather than privileges. Imagine the United States, where renowned architects clamor to design new public housing, complete with green spaces and childcare centers, where on any given evening, you can look forward to stopping by your library or local food co-op, not only for private nourishment, but to feel connected to your community and your democracy. We can make this vision a reality. Our nation has done this before, and we must look at the real historic precedent of the 30s and 40s and find the courage to do it again.
As we've seen from this presentation, the climate change is not affecting everybody equally. However, this time we can make sure that we all come together and no one gets left behind. In the past, we've let people in power divide us, but this time we can make sure that doesn't happen. We can actively work together to adapt to these problems and mitigate future ones from occurring. The key point is that it does depend on us. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's ideals came to life due to the power of the people during the 1930s. This time, the stakes are admittedly higher. The planet is in danger, and people in power are they're working harder than ever to keep us from working together. However, this is why community action is key. We can make it happen, just like people have in the past. Just as a recap, we've discussed how climate change is happening now, and it's getting worse. However, as this is happening, more and more people are becoming aware, and they're showing support for the changes that need to occur. Those in power have been abusing it for decades, resulting in detrimental consequences for the health of the people and the planet. However, finally, we have a solution on the table that can actually make a change, and it's called the Green New Deal.
This is where you come in. We ask you as young people, as stewards of the environment, to take what we've told you tonight and just reflect. We ask you to reflect and talk to your families, talk to your children, whether they're the little ones or you're about to send them off to college for the first time, or the last time, finally get them out of the house, right? But we also ask you to reflect on this as you go up to the upcoming elections. I know 2020 seems way too close and way too far away at the same time. We ask you that just ponder. Think about these questions during debates, when you hear politicians talking. We also ask for right now that you hold your current politicians accountable. Research who you voted for, who's currently in office, see what they believe, write the letters, bother them. Anything that you can do to hold these people accountable and yourself accountable, because we as young people know that you love us, we love you, and this is at the heart of the issue is love. Love for ourselves, love for our families and friends, and our love for our earth. And we ask you to take that love and act on it.
The final point that we want to make tonight is that overall we need to change the debate. Whether that's changing the debate in terms of the debates happening on national live TV or the ones at your dinner dinner table or in your local community center. The Sunrise Movement has a goal, and it wants to keep climate change a key point in any debate that's happening. One of them is the upcoming Democratic debates. We want to make sure that the discussion isn't about whether humans are causing climate change, isn't about whether the Green New Deal is practical or not. We want to talk about climate change and find out which politicians support the Green New Deal and have a firm climate action plan for the future. So, as I mentioned, there are 2 Democratic debates this summer. One in Miami, from the 26th to the 27th of June, and one in Detroit on July 30th and 31st. For the first debate, the Sunrise Movement will be hosting debate watch parties all across the country. And then for the second one, there will be a national movement of the Sunrise Movement mobilizing in Detroit. A debate stage will be created where each candidate at the debate will be challenged to share their climate change plan. That way we know where every politician stands on this issue. If you are more interested in joining the Sunrise Movement or learning more about the cause, you can visit sunrisemovement.org/change-the-debate. You can email sunrisemetrowest@gmail.com and contact the hub coordinator, Kyle Richard. And if you're a non-smartphone user, you can text debate to 72345. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys are an inspiration. They didn't know each other until a few weeks ago, and came together to put this presentation together, and it's been an inspiration for me. I was saying, you guys work better together than a lot of people I work with. It's just been a real inspiration to see that there are young people who are fired up to do something and work together on these issues. So our program tonight, so we have the Sunrise, the Green New Deal presentation, and then I reached out to a number of people in the community, in the region, who have been active on these issues. And what we're going to do now is just have a series of each person coming up here talking a little bit about how climate change is impacting them, what they're doing about it. And after that, we will be open for questions from the audience. And so we're going to start off with Craig Altimos from Better Future. And I think we'll just have each person kind of hand off to the next person, and then we'll all come back here to take questions. So come up here, Craig.
Can you give another round of applause to our Sunrise movement? I know I may not look, I actually started this movement as a young person myself, and I have given a lot of my youth to it, as my balding head demonstrates. I've been doing this work in Massachusetts since 2006, and I came here for graduate school, and was honored to co-found the Future Project and our statewide volunteer-led network, 350 Massachusetts. Anyone heard of 350 Mass out there? And see some of our folks here in the audience. For those of you who are not youth and not involved in Sunrise, I do want to encourage you to get involved in organizations like 350 Mass. We have a Metro West node. We can start a Natick node if folks want to do that, or a node for this area. We have 17 nodes around the state of people like you who come together once a month or once every 2 weeks to figure out how to advance policies at the local and state level in coordination with other folks around the state. That's part of this global 350 work movement, and it's a really powerful thing to be part of. And we can't leave it to young people to win this fight. We have to have their backs. We have to be in this fight because it's really our fault that we are where we are, our generation anyway. It's really the corporate politicians and the corporate leaders, as the youth named. But so there are basically 3 things I want to talk to you today about the Green New Deal. 1, explain how it is strategic. 2nd, how it is moral. And 3rd, how it is necessary. And when I said the Green New Deal, I'm really speaking to both the ambitious level of decarbonizing our economy in the next 11 years by 2030, and also really centering equity and justice as part of this framework as the youth laid out. Anyone feel like that is too ambitious or too radical? Anyone willing to own that? At least one hand. Well, that's great. The rest are already with us, but I'm going to give you some extra ammo then for people who challenge you on that. So first, why this is really strategic. A lot of folks, I've heard the critique often leveled against the Green New Deal. That again, this is too radical, Republicans will never go for it, and so we need to embrace policies that can cross the aisle and win Republican support, right? That's a common thing you hear, at least I have. And the problem with that is that strategy just does not work. And the example I want to give to you all is from Obamacare. Now, people may or may not remember the details of this fight, but the liberal approach to universal health care is a single-payer, government-run system, right? And that was immediately recognized that would not get any Republican support. And so Obama and the Democrats did not push for a single-payer, government-run system. They instead started floating this idea of the public option. People remember the public option? Right? It's the perfect compromise. Government-run insurance for those who want it, private insurance for those who don't. And what did Republicans say? No way, that's too socialist. We can't have a government option. So they took it off the table and they said, okay, we're going to go with what you want, a Republican solution. Market-based policy only, no government intervention, just relying on the private market. And this is an idea that folks may or may not remember what was created by the Heritage Foundation, a Republican think tank in the 90s, and then executed and implemented by a Republican government. So they basically took a Republican idea and said, here you go, Republicans, will you work with us on this? And what was the response? No. That's socialism. We can't have that, and 0 Republican votes for Obamacare, right? And so what have we done with climate change? Let's take a Republican idea, cap and trade, right? This is a market-based solution to climate change that George Bush did in the 90s to address sulfur dioxide. So we'll take a Republican idea and we'll get Republicans to support it, just like we did with the Waxman Market Bill in 2009, right? We passed that and climate change was solved? No. So they took the Republican idea, they tried to get Republican support, and Republicans went to the right. The problem with our country, one of the many problems with our country, is that we live in a very polarized two-party system. It's seen as a zero-sum game. A win for them is a loss for us. And so when Democrats are the left, my left, you're right. Democrats are to the left, Republicans have to move to the right. So if Democrats stand in the center, Republicans move to the right. When Democrats are on the right, Republicans move further to the right, which is off the stage, which is let's do nothing. And that's the problem with the Democratic Party, is that we've been trying to stand over here and say, look, we'll work with you, we'll work with you. And Republicans say, nope, that's socialism, no matter what we offer. Which is why it's critical that Democrats offer policies on the left to create political space for Republicans to say, well, that's crazy, we can't do that, but why don't we have a market-based solution? And then you can have a discussion about what the right solution is, instead of if we should even address the problem. But for that to work, you have to hold the left. You have to hold it hard, you have to fight like hell for it. That's why. So why this is moral? The founding sins of our country are still with us to this day. Anyone thinks that slavery is totally behind us? Anyone think we've achieved gender parity, gender equality? What about income inequality? We've taken care of that one? Nope. How long have we been dealing with these issues? Forever. Hundreds of years. Hundreds of years, right? Climate change is such a big problem that, as our young leaders identified, we have to completely and totally restructure our economy. Everything we do has to change. If we waste that opportunity, like that's not a once-in-a-generation opportunity, that's not a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, this is a once-in-a-civilization opportunity to pause and reflect and think about the world we want to live in, the world we want to build. And if we take this chance and say, well, climate change is such a big deal, we can't afford to address the legacy of slavery and racism, we can't afford to address gender equality, we can't afford to address income inequality and classism, then why bother? I mean, this is it. This is the moment for humanity to re-envision what we want humanity to look like. It's a little cliche. Al Gore said it back in 2006, I think it truth, but the Chinese character for crisis is the same Chinese character for opportunity. This is our chance to fix all of those problems. we're never going to get another need and opportunity to totally redo, to hit the reset button, to figure out how to make things work for everyone. And if we fail to do that now in this moment, that is a moral failure that will stick for us for another 300 years, for thousands of years to come. This is the time now to push, to change everything. And finally, I want to articulate why this is a necessary policy. So, most of the policies you've heard about climate change before have on the one hand talked about, we hear sort of the frame, reducing emissions 80% by 2050. Anyone heard that? Is that inspiring? No? Did anyone say, we're going to reduce the number of slaves in the country by 80% over the next 32 years? Is that a call to action to address previous social ills? Right? I have some friends who help popularize that frame. I like them a lot, but it's not inspiring, it doesn't connect with people. And honestly, talking about fixing any problem 30 plus years into the future, what does that tell you about the problem? It's not important. It's not important, it's not urgent, we've got time, don't stress out about it. When in reality, nature is starting to tell people, worry about this right now. Right? This problem needs to be solved right now. And so if we keep talking about 2050 as the end target, we are working against ourselves. We are working against the signals that nature is sending us about the need to address this now, here and today. Right? So we need to decarbonize our economy by 2030. And the truth is that's already too late. Millions of people are dying every year from climate change. And so the notion that we can keep polluting for 11 more years and that to be a morally acceptable response, pardon my French, that's bullshit. Saying we can pollute for 31 more years, and that's an acceptable response. It is, I don't even have a word, whatever bullshit is times the thing. But this is a crisis, and we need to act like it's a crisis. We need to bring that sense of urgency that the youth are bringing, and we need to carry that forward and stand behind them and fight for it. And again, it can't just be about climate change. This has to center equity. This has to center justice. And again, if you want to find a good model for why, look ahead to the Yellow Vest protests in France. If folks know the history of those protests, President Macron set out a carbon tax, a market-based solution that the right should be behind, right? Raise the price of fuel, and what did he tell people? In 30 years, your lives will be less bad for this. You have to suffer now so that in 30 years, your lives will be less bad. You will suffer less in 30 years. That was the basic message for why you're suffering now. And it turns out, when you're already struggling to make ends meet, saying, we're going to make it harder for you, but in 30 years, you'll suffer less, is not enough for your average, everyday person to say, great, you've got my full support. And so instead, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets in protest. And they came back again and again and again. And to be fair, it's not all against climate change. This was seen as the straw that broke the camel's back of Macron having a lot of out-of-touch policies that have seen serving the elites at the expense of the working class. But we cannot let climate change be perceived to be something that only wealthy white people care about, and that is only going to benefit wealthy white people. If we do that, we will have the same pushback that the Yellow Vest protests have had in France, which again is a more progressive country than the United States, and they're getting that pushback. So we need to have a policy that centers justice, that centers equity, that tells you not just your lives will be less bad in 30 years, you're going to be better tomorrow. Because you're going to have universal health care. You're going to have a jobs guarantee. If you want to work for this movement to get us off of fossil fuels, you'll have a good, not just a job, but a good paying job that will let you sustain your family so you don't have to worry about it, right? It's taking the worries out of everyone's lives. You're going to have health care, you're going to have a job. Those are the two biggest concerns for most Americans. How am I going to pay my bills? And what happens if I get sick, right? You take those two worries off the plate and you give people a common purpose to rally behind, we will rally behind it. But we have to dig in our heels and fight for this policy. And not give up the speed and not give up the scope. We're going to get a lot of pressure to compromise on both the the speed of how fast we make this transition and the scope, how broad this looks like. How many areas this policy touches. And again, that's not our job to do. That's the politicians ultimately, it's their job to figure out what the right compromise is, right? There are 100 members of the Senate, there are 454 members of the House. They're the ones who have to do the compromising. It's our job to fight for what we believe in, and to plant our feet as firmly as we can on that, and to push as much as we can the popular will and popular support in our direction. That's our charge. And again, the good news is that our state is pretty well behind this on the federal level. Our federal politicians have done the right thing, that 8 of our 9 federal reps and both of our senators have co-sponsored this resolution. It's one thing, though, to co-sponsor, it's another thing to fight for, right? And our 9th rep, if you have friends out in Western Mass, Richard Neal is the one rep who has not yet signed on. And he is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee in the United States Congress. He holds the purse strings. This is going to cost money. So we're going to need the chair of the Ways and Means Committee behind us. So again, Western Mass, call your friends up there, tell them to call Richard Neal. This is going to be a big part of this. But then the other thing that we are doing here in Massachusetts, 350 Mass, working with the Green Justice Coalition, which Vic will speak about, and the Sunrise Boston, and with others, is we're trying to pull together a table of climate, jobs, and justice to figure out what a Massachusetts version of a Green New Deal should look like. And it's an intentionally slow-going process, because we don't want the climate group saying, this is what the policy will be. What do you think, labor? What do you think, communities of color? But to really set that table together intentionally so that equal parts, jobs, justice, and climate coming together to say, this is what we want a Massachusetts version of this policy to look like. Because way too often the climate community, the environmentalists have just charged ahead doing stuff and then asked these groups to come and support. And that's not how we're going to win. And so that's not how we're doing it this time. And so there's not a policy yet, but we're hoping that there will be one that these constituencies can come together around. And when that comes out, we're really going to need the help of folks like you to push our state legislature to act on this very quickly. So I'm going to wrap it up here. But yeah, I just want to, again, really encourage you all, please join 350 Mass, or please join a different group. You don't have to join us, but if you're in this room, you're aware of the problem, I'm sorry to put this on your shoulders, but you have an obligation to do something about it. So please join us. If you're not, many of you are already in the fight, and thank you if you are. Thank you for all you've done. But if you're not, please join us. We need you out there. I'll see you in the streets. Is the Clean Energy Organizer for Clean Water Action.
Alright, so like Craig said, I'm Dedham, Clean Energy Organizer for Clean Water Action. So I'm actually not going to talk about clean energy. If anyone wants to talk about wonky energy policy, DPU proceedings, fair cooling, stuff like that, see me after the program. I help coordinate the Mass Power Forward table, and I'm going to tell you more about how you can get involved right now today on passing the policies that can be a model for a Green New Deal. So Clean Water Action, we help coordinate the Mass Power Forward table, and we're also a member of the Green Justice Coalition, which is a people of color-led, community-led coalition working on environmental justice issues. And Mass Power Forward is the biggest grassroots environmental coalition in the state. Many of the biggest environmental groups are in it, like 350, Sierra Club, Mass Climate Action Network, and most of the other ones you've probably heard of. So I'll give you a little quick history of Mass Power Forward. It started out of, a couple years ago, out of the need from pipeline fighters all throughout western and central Mass, coal plant fighters in the southern part of the state fighting Brayton Point, the ones fighting Mount Tom over by Springfield Holyoke, and then the fights in the State House that were actually going to stop those pipelines, they're going to help build new renewable energy, and we realized that all all of these different groups of people, these local fights, the statewide fights, they all need to work together. We're all in this fight together, and it's one fight. The fight for renewable energy is also the fight against coal plants and natural gas pipelines in your backyard. So they created the Mass Power Forward Coalition, which is now the biggest environmental coalition in Massachusetts. And who is it? It is environmental leaders, community development organizations, clean energy businesses, faith groups and leaders, neighborhood health and safety advocates, and Massachusetts families fighting for our future. Mass Power Forward today counts almost 200 member organizations and leaders from across the state. So, like Craig was saying, there is no Green New Deal policy out there right now in Massachusetts. We are working on putting together the table that will create it, having it be led by environmental justice communities and labor, and environmental groups like 350 and Sunrise. While there is no Green New Deal policy yet, the Mass Power Forward platform is exactly what the Green New Deal is going for. So I'm going to run through some of our platform principles, how we center our work, and the visions that drive the environmental community and movement in Massachusetts. So we have 6 different principles here. First one, protect the public good. So put our energy, water, and transportation systems in the hands of people-driven, democratic institutions as opposed to private corporations, and uphold the right to organize in our workplaces and communities. The second one is democratize our power grid, empower everyday people and consumers to access, own, and control locally generated energy, and prioritize people over corporations. The third one is grow a green economy that creates quality jobs, local workforce development opportunities, and healthier, safer communities. We want to direct public investment, capital, and contracts towards companies in the green economy that provide living wages, safe working conditions, and compliance with local, state, and federal wage and hour laws. Pay equity across gender, strong healthcare and retirement benefits, paid family leave and childcare, economic mobility, diversity in hiring, non-discriminatory workplace, and support for workers using public transportation, as well as access to worker ownership and it's a long list of things that we don't have right now. The fourth one is advancing Massachusetts towards a safer and healthier economy, powered by 100% clean and renewable sources for heat and power, which means maximizing energy efficiency, demand reduction, energy storage, solar, wind, offshore and onshore, rapidly reducing our dependence on polluting energy sources, such as coal, oil, gas, and nuclear power. We need to also reduce our dependence on technologies like biomass and trash incineration, which all generate power at the expense of public health. The fifth one, we need to ensure a just transition for workers and communities impacted by the retirement of power plants, the phase out of fossil fuels, the climate catastrophe, and we need to create tangible support for training, employment, healthcare, retirement packages for workers. And help redevelopment for municipalities and bolster community resilience as socially and economically vulnerable communities are met with the increased hazards of climate change. The last one is we have to combat climate change. We need to keep us on track to reduce global warming pollution. We used to have in our platform 80% by 2050, and we changed it to 100% because we know that 80% is not enough, and it puts us in the position of all of these fossil fuel industries jockeying to be the 20% that's going to emit 30 years from now. That's not acceptable for our health or for the climate. So what are we doing right now? Mass Power Forward has 3 different priorities that or 3 different outcomes that we are prioritizing in the state legislature right now. The first one is environmental justice. So we need to include communities impacted by climate change and fossil fuel pollution as participants in crafting new equitable policies. When we see fights all over the state, there's fights out in Springfield about biomass. There's trash incinerators in Worcester and Saugus. There's an electrical substation that they're trying to build in a floodplain in East Boston. There's a compressor station in Weymouth right now that's right across the bay from environmental justice communities. And the government is not playing a role at all in protecting communities from these hazards. In fact, they're encouraging companies to build and expand these facilities. And that needs to stop if we're going to make progress.
Right.
And the second one, and as I go through these, part of what we do in this environmental movement and what we're doing in Mass Power Forward is trying to prioritize equity and justice throughout all of our outcomes. So the second outcome is 100% renewable energy. So we need to set an ambitious goal to reach 100% renewable electricity by 2035 and 100% renewable energy for heating and transportation by 2045. If we allow any percentage of non-renewable energy, any percentage of emissions in the world we're creating, we know those emissions are going to hurt the communities that are the front lines of climate change right now. We're going to keep dumping in communities of color, and we're going to keep polluting the air of the poorest communities in Massachusetts. The last priority, the last outcome that we know we need is equitable investment in green infrastructure. So we have to use mechanisms such as carbon pricing or the Transportation Climate Initiative to invest today for the future we want. People can't switch from fossil fuel resources and consumption unless they have better options. So we know that we need to raise the money today to invest in the future we want tomorrow. All right, and the last thing I'm going to go over is how you can join. So the first thing is check out our website. It's mapowerforward.com. Right there you'll see everything about our vision, who's in the coalition already, how you can sign up for our action network right there on the spot, and all the information about the bills we support in the state legislature. We also have Facebook and Twitter, mapowerforward, on both of them. So please like and follow. If your local group is not already in the Mass Power Forward Coalition, go check out the website. You have to endorse the policy platform that I just ran through, those 6 points, and then you can take part. We will set you up to have all the resources you need to lobby the state government and to help move renewable energy policies on a local level. And the other thing is, we have a large planning team, so feel free to reach out to any of the groups that help lead the coalition, like Sierra Club, 350, Mass Climate Action Network. A lot of the ones you've heard of are in the coalition. So let them know you're interested and check out our website. Thanks, everyone. Next, I'm going to introduce Virginia LeClaire, the environmental coordinator for the town of Dedham.
Hi, I'm Virginia LeClaire. I'm the environmental coordinator for the town of Dedham. Thank you so much for having us here today. It's a pleasure to be here. And I have with me Chuck Cabot from the Sustainability Advisory Committee. And I just also wanted to point out a couple other Sustainability Advisory Committee members that are here. We have with us John Gorham and Emily Walton. And anyone else that I missed? Sorry about that. So I'm the environmental coordinator for the town of Dedham. This position was created in 2007. And just to give you a little bit of background, at the time it seemed like there weren't many of us, but there are growing numbers of sustainability directors in other communities. And we're hoping to see that number grow because sustainability committee members, we need more people working at the municipal level on these initiatives. So what I wanted to do is just go over some of the work that we've done through my department and with the support of the Sustainability Advisory Committee
We've heard a lot today about what we need to be doing, and definitely every day I feel that pressure. And sitting here today, I feel even more so driven that we need to be acting and we need to be doing things at a faster pace. So these are some of the things that we've been doing, and Chuck will go over some of the highlights of what we're planning for the future. So the town of Dedham was awarded in 2009 the Leading by Example Award. That was for recycling initiatives. We were awarded $500,000 for a solar array. That is on the town hall and the high school. And we were awarded $150,000 through energy efficiency conservation block grants. And for the solar array, we went to town meeting and asked for the sale of the renewable energy credits to be put into a designated renewable energy fund. So that was approved by the Attorney General. So the sale of the renewable energy credits goes to fund future renewable energy initiatives within the town. So we were designated a green community by the Department of Energy Resources in 2010. And if there's any other communities out there that haven't done this yet, I would say this is a great first starting point towards sustainable future. We received with that funding that enabled us to do LED streetlights. We have one electric vehicle charging station in Dedham. We're hoping to have more. It's in the Keystone parking lot in Dedham Square, but we're eager to have more of those. So the LED retrofit project, that was done through the funding that we received through the Green Communities. And we received $179,800 Green Communities funding. We replaced 600 HPS lights with LEDs. And then in 2014, we received for phase 2 another $250,000. And we retrofitted all of our streetlights. This is a huge accomplishment for the town of Dedham. And it's something that other communities are still working to do. And I can say that Dedham is really doing a great job with sustainability. And the reason why I can say that is I'm part of a larger sustainability network called the New England Municipal Sustainability Directors Network. And I'm hearing from other communities, they're still trying to do this. So this is a huge accomplishment, and it wouldn't have been possible without the funding through the Green Communities Division. So anticipated savings of 591,000 kilowatts and anticipated payback, or per year, 76,842 per year to the town with a simple payback of 7.5 years. And then as part of the renewable energy fund that I was telling you earlier about, we have retrofitted all of the exterior schools with LED lights. So we're going to continue on our mission of retrofitting all of our buildings with LED lights. So recycling, as I mentioned earlier, part of the 2009 Leading by Example Award was the implementation of single stream recycling and automated trash collection. Then we were awarded, as a result of that, the 2010 Mass Recycling Small Municipal Award. And we did put in public space recycling bins. They are still giving us a hard time, and we're hoping to improve on public space recycling bins. The problem is that people use them also as their trash bin, and then they get pulled out. So we're trying to launch an education campaign about how to properly use a public recycling bin so that it stays there. We've implemented school recycling and composting. We received a grant from DEP, and this is another, great initiative that we've taken on. Took several years, but a great partnership with the schools. And we're continuing to work on this. It's a struggle. The Avery Elementary students, they really get it. The younger kids, they listen, they know what to do, they separate. But once you get to the high school level, they just, it starts to fade off. But we have great support at the schools with a wonderful science teacher, Christine Casali, and she's creating a youth organization through the schools that will work to help build up this support. So, Dedham Trails. This is, if you live in Dedham or if you haven't been out on the Charles River, we have several different canoe and kayak launches. And we encourage you to come out to our Dedham Trails Day, which is August 4th from 10 to 2. If you want to try one of the kayaks or get into an LLBeing program, we partnered with LLBeing. And the reason why I love this program so much is when I started here in 2007, there was very little access to the Charles River unless you lived on the Charles River. So what we did with the DCR funds is we created canoe and kayak launches. And our latest launch that we just approved here at Town Landing, which is right over there, is we put in a handicap accessible launch. We wanted our canoe and kayak launches to be not just accessible for some people, but be accessible for all. So it's a great new launch. Please check it out. Give us your feedback. We have a Facebook page, Dedham Trails, you can follow us on for information, and then we have a website, dedhamtrails.com. We created a gardening program. It's still budding. We need more people to join and to help support this gardening program. It's fantastic. It's at all different levels, for young kids to adults, meaning the beds are staggered so that everyone can enjoy it. And you can learn more about that on the town's website. And I'll just quickly go through this because my time's up and I don't want to cut into Chuck's time, but we created a park in Mill Pond Park in East Dedham. This has been a fantastic example of art. It's our first park with public art. And we're working to improve transportation in Dedham. It's an ongoing process and we're working to gain more bike lanes and sharrows and make more pedestrian and bicycle friendly community.
First, I want to start off by thanking Anna, Alexandra, Sarah, and Andrea. This is what we see for our future. It's actually getting a lot brighter, so thank you. It's very impressive. Second person, Citizen Committee, who is part of it as well as the environmental coordinator for the town. I'm sorry. We're very fortunate. We have 7 citizen members. If you're from a community that doesn't have a sustainability advisory committee, try and build one. It works very well, and we see a lot of action. What we do is we provide a center of excellence and some leadership and guidance and just offer a fresh voice and fresh opinions to some of the projects that go on in the town to try and make sure that environmental and sustainable initiatives are incorporated into them. Another piece that we do is community education. We believe strongly that we need to work with all different types of media, be it social, traditional, blogs, or other areas, to make sure that we educate the community of Dedham and beyond. And we have a great partnership with the Dedham Times, who will often help us with getting the message out there. We have succeeded with a number of things. We were designated municipal vulnerability preparedness community by the state. We joined the Global Covenant of Mayors last year, and that is so that we can take place on an international level. We can try and help cut greenhouse gas emissions. We're pretty excited about that. And right now we're in the application process to get funding for the sustainable building guidelines for municipal buildings around town. So we're going to get some consultancy money to go ahead and build that, so we can get a towards the net zero as well. So we serve the town through a number of things. One of the tactical items we do are recycling events. We love single-stream recycling. We're very proud of it. We find it convenient, but not everything can be recycled, of course, at curbside. Things styrofoam, large bulk, scrap metal, paper shredding, things such as that, including bicycles that can be fixed and brought to international locations. Those types of things are used and taken care of through the recycling events. And also we have a fundraiser at the Neponset Valley Sunrise Rotary Club with tremendous partners. They take the electronics, there's a small fee, and then that money gets circled back into the community as well. Up next is something that a lot of folks are talking about, some of your communities are already doing, and that is to join several Massachusetts communities and communities around the world that are trying to reduce the use of single-use plastic bags. We've got our own community plus the citizen community that's joined us. We've got folks on that community, from the community that are as young as 12 and all the way into their 80s. They're taking this very seriously. We're going to work with local businesses and all of the different coalition groups around town and elected officials to go ahead and try and stop the use of these bags. They're ubiquitous. We know that. They're convenient. We agree. But they need to stop, and they're the #1 factor that's causing trash within our single-stream recycling. it's sort of a lift and shift tax situation too. So some people feel that the tax is going to be put on the small business people because they need to get back. But actually, last year, the Department of Public Works said that our vendor, who's taking back our curbside recycling, charged us $74,000 for the plastic bags that were contaminated in our single stream. So actually, by getting rid of them, will actually help cost control. So we'll look for that as well. And that is it.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Alex Rabbit to talk about climate and our health.
Hi everyone, thank you for inviting me. My name is Alex Raven. I'm a pulmonary and critical care physician at Tufts Medical School and Tufts University School of Medicine. And I'm here to talk a little bit, just give a big picture overview of why, of how climate change is currently impacting our health and how it may impact our health to a greater degree in the future. I'm a pulmonologist. I take care of patients with lung disease, ranging from mild asthma to very severe end-stage lung disease requiring lung transplant in the ICU. And types of patients that we care for in the lung clinic are the patients that are in some ways most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And you may be thinking, well, in Massachusetts, actually the air is pretty good. What's the big deal? I mean, I don't think that this is really going to affect me. Well, that's true to some extent. We have made great progress in cleaning up the air in Massachusetts and in the region, in large part thanks to environmental laws that were passed in the 1970s and forward. But we are already seeing significant impacts to human health from the impacts of climate change. And I'll just give you a few examples of things that we see on, maybe not a daily basis, but on a regular basis in the clinic. For one, as you guys may know already, pollen seasons are getting longer, and not only are they longer, they're actually more intense. And we're actually in the midst of a very intense pollen season. For most of us, pollen is just a nuisance, causes a little runny nose, maybe you need to take an extra Claritin. But for patients with asthma or severe lung disease, it's actually very serious and it can lead to hospitalizations that are potentially deadly, life-threatening, and of course very costly. Another impact that we're seeing is in the form of heat waves. And as was mentioned earlier, we are seeing more heat waves on a regular basis, and the heat waves that we're seeing are more intense. Heat in itself is dangerous, causes electrolyte disturbances, causes, we find it actually an increased risk of common infections, particularly in the elderly. But it also raises ground level ozone, which is a contributor to smog, which in itself also raises the risk for worsening asthma or COPD exacerbations, as well as cardiac arrhythmias and myocardial infarction. So that is one thing that we're seeing for sure, particularly in urban areas where there's what's called the urban heat island effect, where heat builds up in places where there's a lot of asphalt. So those are just a few examples of the direct effects of climate change that we're seeing in our very communities, and we expect these effects to only worsen and become magnified over the coming years as global temperatures rise. And so, unfortunately, not only is this all costly, and we have we already know there's a lot of health effects, but this is also putting a strain on health systems themselves. And again, I'll just give you a couple examples. Again, we think of climate change maybe as something that's going on, you know, in the developing world or, you know, in vulnerable places, but it actually impacts us at home in a lot of ways. One example that really hit us hard, I was a trainee at Mass General, and I was there in 2017 around the time of Hurricane Maria, if you guys recall the severe hurricane that hit Puerto Rico. Well, actually, when that hurricane hit, it took out basically the sole manufacturer for small intravenous bags. And as a result, we didn't have small IV bags for almost a year. And so we were left to basically administer medications in syringes, which is time-consuming for nurses, more costly, and potentially dangerous because you're administering medications in unfamiliar formulations. So that's just one example of how supply chains, again, healthcare systems are complicated, can be disrupted. The other example that, again, you may have come across in the news was Superstorm Sandy in 2012, which absolutely devastated parts of New York and Long Island, and actually took out a large portion of NYU Langone, which is a big research center, and destroyed much of their mouse labs and other research facilities. So in Massachusetts and in Boston in particular, a lot of our hospitals and, you know, crown jewels of healthcare in the U.S. are in Boston, you know, are vulnerable. And just as an example, Mass General is basically right, you know, built on landfill. So it is extremely vulnerable to future flooding events. So those are just some clear impacts, both direct and indirect, of climate change on our health. Unfortunately, again, healthcare is itself a huge part of the problem. And actually, hospitals and healthcare facilities, which, you know, account for a huge economic driver in our state, contribute. Numbers are rough, but nationwide, approximately 10% of greenhouse gas emissions are directly attributable to healthcare. And of course, hospitals are huge consumers of electricity. They produce a tremendous amount of waste. As you guys are also, I'm sure, are well aware, because we have so many commuters going to work at healthcare facilities, they contribute a tremendous amount of greenhouse gas emissions from transportation. So, you know, there's tremendous that both hospitals are both part of the problem, but they also can be part of the solution. And some hospitals are taking action. In Massachusetts, just to give you a couple of examples, Boston Medical Center has now committed to carbon neutrality, and they've committed to a power purchase agreement in North Carolina. Partners Healthcare has committed to be carbon net positive by 2025. And they again committed to buying electricity from renewable sources. But you know, these are modest steps, and again, we're talking about some of the largest healthcare providers in the state that have a lot of money. But we really desperately need strong state and federal action to support smaller hospitals, to support institutions like my own Tufts Medical Center, which really doesn't have a ton of money to burn. And we need to level the playing field for the healthcare institutions across the state. So I'm so excited and you know, thankful for all the community action that's out there, and we hope that we can make an impact from the standpoint of our healthcare organizations, because our patients rely on us, and you know, this really is a healthcare emergency as well, you know, as all the other issues we discussed. Thank you.
Next, John Burkhardt from Extinction Rebellion.
Thank you. Hi, I'm John Burkhardt, and I'm here from an activist group called Extinction Rebellion. I'm pretty new to climate activism. I learned about Extinction Rebellion actually because I was watching French television and I was watching the Yellow Vest protests over there. And they segued over to another protest that was happening in the streets in London, and I looked it up and I looked at what Extinction Rebellion was saying, and they were actually contrasting themselves too with what was happening in France. They had 6,000 people take over a bridge in London and shut down part of the city for a period of time. And something about that really intrigued me, something about the name really intrigued me. And I did some research on it and found that they were becoming active in Boston. The group started in the UK. It actually started as a group called Rising Up. They were looking at income inequality, extreme capitalism, the consequences of that. And then thought about, and then around the time the IPCC report came out, really started focusing on climate, and also noticing that, I think like the youth were saying in Sunrise, that a lot of this is connected. So much is connected to our consumption patterns and our way of life. They thought about launching Extinction Rebellion as a campaign of rising up, and then it just got to be big enough to become its own organization. Last April, they had, I don't know how many thousands of people, they shut down London for over a week, 4 different areas, and actually got a seat at a negotiating table and talked to the British Parliament. And soon after, the UK declared a state of emergency, declared a climate emergency. That was sort of proof that this tactic can be effective. So this is the tactic of direct action, direct civil disobedience, getting out in the street with your body, doing something direct, partly to engage with the public, partly to be kind of a human alarm. And I think like Craig was showing his by his motion of going from the right to the left, we're trying to be like way out there, pull the conversation a little bit this way, move the window of what's what people are talking about, get the conversation going. Our organization is actually outside of politics, so we don't endorse particular political parties or policy. We don't have an official position on Green New Deal, but we do have 4 key demands that we're asking of our government. And if I go through them, you'll see that there's a lot of alignment there. I would probably say that a lot of our members, if they were, when they vote or when they think about policies they do support, would be very much aligned with Green New Deal. The first one is just that the government tell the truth. And communicate to the public, because as I find in my life, my personal life, as I become activated and aware of this issue, is that a lot of people just have no idea how bad it is. They just don't know. I work at a big high-tech firm in software. People are presumably pretty well educated and informed. And I have conversations with people, and I talk about the IPCC. They're like, I kind of heard something about that. I don't know, what was that? Or like, I'm really worried about climate change. Like, is it bad? I guess it's bad. I don't know. People just really don't know. They don't know what's going on, and I think that's partly intentional.
Yes.
So that's our first demand. The second one is a legally binding measures that will reduce our carbon, our CO2 emissions to net zero by 2025.
That's
so
nice.
it's pretty, again, like fairly extreme. Again, like trying to be over here, trying to be somewhat commensurate with the urgency that's required in order to avert catastrophe. Because the reality is that we're talking about the baseline problem that we have now. And that's where we are today, and it's actually going to get worse, probably for the rest of our lives. I mean, that's where we are. This isn't something that we can just turn off the thermostat and turn off climate change. This is a slow-moving path that we're on, and it's a big ship that we have to steer, and it's going to take a long time to course correct, and we need to take drastic measures. Treat it like an emergency first. The third one is around a just transition. I'm not going to go into detail on that. We're very much in line with what other groups are talking about in terms of prioritizing the most vulnerable and the most affected by the problem. And then the fourth one is like direct participation in this process. It's another thing that you can see is aligned with the goals of the Green New Deal. It's actually form a part of government that is directly directly participating in the process of making policy. That's a process called sortition. Direct action works. We've studied the theory of social change and what's required to make the abrupt course correction that we need to make right now. I talk to a lot of leaders in my company, business leaders, and they tell me that what's required is political change. That it has to come from social change, from political change, not so much from business. I'm a little bit concerned when I hear talk of green development and green business as if this is a new growth opportunity or a new business opportunity. The reality is that this is a crisis and emergency first. We have to do everything we can to make sure that the largest number of us survive this century. So things like writing letters and voting, and those are all good things to do. I also don't think that we have enough time. If we had another 100 years, we could wait for the moral arc to bend toward justice eventually. But we have to course correct right now. We have to take a left turn immediately. So that's why I'm getting out in the street with my group. We go out and do direct actions. We're somewhat confrontational, of course nonviolent. We've been inspired by the youth movements, inspired by Sunrise, Greta Thunberg, Youth Strike. We don't want to leave it all up to the kids. We don't think that's fair. We think that's, point of phrase, bullshit. Like hell, it's up to the kids. It's up to us. We're the ones that were primarily responsible for creating this, for bringing this society about. And we owe it to them to stand by them in solidarity and to take the same kinds of direct action that they're taking. I just wanted to read out real quick, I'm out of time, but some stats of our movement now, which I had to look up because I couldn't memorize them. But so we're now in, I can't see very well because of the light, 59 countries, 354 different groups, over 100,000 people who have signed up for the movement, and who've taken, signed up for these principles of nonviolent direct action and civil disobedience. And this is all in the last 8 months. Emily Norton, who's from the Charles River, and us.
All right, moment of truth. Let's see if this will work. Keep you guys awake. All right, is that working? Oh, turning on, okay. I could sing in the meantime. So my name is Emily Norton. I serve as the Executive Director of the Charles River Watershed Association. I've been there since August, and I was previously with Sierra Club, and I know some of you folks from my role there. And, it looks like it's coming up. It's so exciting. Little things. All right, now, how do I move it? These young people help me. Right? They do. It's usually my 11-year-old.
Sorry, yeah, I'm the kids touch screen, guys.
Yeah, I'm not that.
I have to touch on it.
All right, awesome. So I am with Charles River Watershed Association. We just, the EPA announced today that we received a B grade. I'm actually not going to talk much about the Charles River. I can do that later or another time if folks want it. I also serve as a city councilor in Newton, so I'm so excited to encourage the gals to run for office. Don't wait until you're old. First of all, how many people here are originally from Massachusetts? Okay, so I'm a Massel as well. We are smarter than everyone else, right? You know more. We've got Harvard, we've got MIT, we've got a bunch of smart places. We are literally the most educated state in the country. We are the innovation state, so of course we should be leading. Anyone think of some things we led on recently? First state to gay marriage. And, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. To pass gay marriage. First state to, where did Obamacare start? All right, it might suck for various reasons, but it's still better than what we have. It started here. First state to ban bump stocks after Las Vegas. Leading is what we do. All right. Yes, I did. And in addition, we have the benefit, if you're a politician in Massachusetts, that people in Massachusetts believe in climate change. This was a WBUR poll from 2 years ago, which found that 88% of Massachusetts voters, not residents, but voters, and a little secret, politicians don't care about residents, we care about voters, are very or somewhat concerned about climate change. So when you know that, you know that you're ahead of Indiana and Oklahoma and a lot of other places. But we're not really doing everything that we could be doing. We heard earlier this evening, and you already know what's going on the global level. The number of jobs, solar jobs in Massachusetts is going down. All right, there's the chart that shows it. We're going the wrong direction with solar jobs. Our governor still supports more fracked gas pipelines. He supports compressor stations. Wayland folks are following that. He's the most popular governor in America, and he has a population that really wants to be doing more on clean energy, but we're going in the wrong direction on some key areas. This is a map of Dedham. How many people are from Dedham? We're here. Okay, this is according to, this is DPU data that's pulled together by a fabulous group called HEAT, working with Mothers Out Front in particular. This is a map of the gas leaks in Dedham, okay? Yellow is unrepaired, red is repaired, and the gas leaks alone, aside from everything else, that's about 10% of the greenhouse gas emission profile for Massachusetts. In their wisdom, the legislature has not seen fit to make utilities pay for those leaks. You and I pay. You use gas, you pay for the leaks.
Yep.
Goes into the atmosphere, warms our planet. Merrimack Valley, right, not very safe for all of us. There is a bill, there's been a bill languishing in the legislature to make the utilities pay for that, to make them clean them up faster. It hasn't happened. So, a lot of times when I'm talking to folks, I get the sense that people don't feel like they know what to do, or they don't feel like they have any power. I'm just going to contrast some human beings of the 8 billion or so on the planet. If you were a villager in Kenya, if you were a refugee from Guatemala, or that's supposed to be Aquitaine, is that in Dedham? I don't know. I don't even know what this is to wait anymore. Or if you were a resident, a middle and upper class person in Dedham, who has more power on this planet? Right? You actually have more power than you think. One reason you have more power is that nobody votes. And I can say this as a local elected official myself. I was duking it out with this woman when I had an open seat. 30% turnout. 30? 30.
That's pretty good.
That's high.
Yeah.
Right? For a local election. Are there any elected officials here? Right? What's your role?
Planning board.
Planning board, excellent.
595 votes.
Love that seat. I got 1,046. Planning board. There should be more. So state rep, state senator, same thing. So terrible for democracy. Great if you're one of those very few voters. I literally tell folks, go in and meet with your select board members, so meet with your representative, and just say, oh, thank you so much. It's so interesting to talk to you about, but I'm going to bring this information back to the 50 women in my book club. You have their attention. There's hardly anyone votes. Sorry, I got to move along. Another thing is that government, as was mentioned earlier by the students, if you thought about what happened during FDR and the New Deal, government has extraordinary power. 2 words, eminent domain. I am not calling for anyone's property to be taken. My point is that government has extraordinary power to do a lot of things, to mandate a lot of things, if they feel pressure by people like you. And if we don't do what you want us to do, you will vote us out. I'm going to differ a little bit with my Extinction Rebellion friend that the direct action, what is it going to lead to? It's leading to politicians doing more. So here's just a few examples. For example, just an example of, remember when the government cared about whether we lived or died from cigarettes? There were all kinds of ads. The government went through a lot of trouble to make you healthier, to help you live healthier, to help kids not smoke, all kinds of ads, all kinds of activities. That is a proper thing for government to do. This is just a list that I was brainstorming last night at midnight when I was putting this together of things that could happen at the local or state level. Excellent. State Senator? Okay. How many of them know your name? Pretty good. Not every hand's up. How many of them have your cell phone number? Okay. When they're excited, how do I do? Right? That's what we want. You want to be instilling a wee bit of fear. I am wicked into this stuff. I have done things in Newton because people in Newton pestered me. We just did a little divestment thing, which I'm really sad about, because someone pestered me about it. So this is a list of some things that could already be advocated for at the state or local level. So how many here have kids? Grandchildren? Nieces? Nephews? All right. These kids put it better than I could, but when I think about the things that I did to keep my little darling safe, the binky falls on the ground and you boil it, at least for the first child. Water bottle. For my little darlings, I have 3 failed attempts at a girl, so we spent over $1,000 on bars for the upstairs windows so they would curl themselves out the window. The amount of money you spend, the amount of time you spend, the amount of worry for the little people that we love and care for, it's not even a question of what you will do for them, how much you will spend for them, it's what wouldn't you do for them. Right? That's what we're talking about here. Would you be willing to switch to an electric vehicle? Are you willing to eat a little bit less meat? Are you willing to, and this is with a student from Sunrise, Alan Joe, remember him, go to a meeting with your congressman, this is the Joe Kennedy, where we asked him to sign a fossil-free pledge and the Green New Deal pledge, which he did 2 days later. Or this is a meeting with a state rep. That's all we're asking. Actually, it's not all we're asking, but it's a beginning step. But we can each do things in our own lives to make a difference. Does anyone remember this story? This creepy dude who was taking pictures of women's skirts on the T. Remember that? The upstage skirting guy? In case you're like, where is she going with this? I am going somewhere. Okay, so this guy was arrested for taking pictures of women's skirts. Very bad. Turned out that was not illegal. It went to the Supreme Judicial Court. 2014 was found that it was not illegal to take pictures of women's skirts. How quickly, does anyone remember how quickly our state legislature acted to make upskirting illegal?
1 day. It says 1 day.
24 hours. Now, I submit to you, upskirting, terrible. Climate change, worse. I believe we're still in democracy. Donald Trump is very popular in the United States. That is still, we can go talk about that. That is still an example of democracy working. Not the way I would like, but it still works in this state in a way we would want. If everyone who cares about climate change and answer that poll would make a call or go meet someone, and you don't have to be an energy PhD. Ask Sierra what to say. Ask Clean Water Act. Ask me what to say. You will know more than they do. Spend 15 minutes with me, you're going to know more than your legislator. And I'm not trying to diss anyone, but every local legislator in Massachusetts is part-time, except Cambridge and Boston. So I can speak to this. I have a full-time job, 3 little darlings, and a part-time gig as a city council. I don't have time. I don't have a researcher. I don't have staff. So if you go to them and say, I want you to do this, and this is what I do, when people ask me to do things, you do the research and you tell me, you write the ordinance, you tell me what to do. Great, right? I mean, some of you have got some time in your hands. Look at you here. If you were willing to do some of this research, bring back a model ordinance to your local elected, they would love you. Not everyone will do it, but you don't need everyone to do it. You can try. And the risks on the right side are relatively low for acting in Massachusetts. This is Beverly Cassis, who was Honduran, murdered in her home by folks who were not appreciative of her opposition to a hydroelectric dam. This is a list of people who've been killed around the world for being environmental activists. On the right side, that is probably not going to happen to you, so you can scratch that off the list in terms of excuses for not doing more. My favorite quote, and these gals gave the example of it, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. That's from Mahatma Gandhi. That's all I've got. Hopefully, anyone who wants to run for office, come and talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very inspiring presentation. So at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions. Do we have anyone else?
No.
If you'd like to They have 5 chairs up here, so if you guys would like to come forward, and that's a live mic over there. So I think if people have questions, we can, gentleman in the back there, and if we don't have a microphone, you reach back there, if you talk loud, I'll repeat your question.
Or come up to the very happy to be here. Thank you all, especially for the young ladies who came here for this presentation. There was very little mention about energy conservation, about saving energy and how we would do that. I think that the young ladies mentioned that buildings should be retrofit to be more efficient, and there was going to be a lot of jobs, and I think that's a great idea. And when you save energy, because 50% of, or maybe more, of all kinds of buildings, houses of worship, factories, offices, data centers, residences, 50% or more they're very wasteful. And mass save, it's good, it's a good idea, but it's very stingy. And also the owners and the facility managers, they don't care about saving energy. But if we could save energy, because the energy that's wasted is the majority. It's usually because the houses are conventional old. It's very it uses a lot of fossil fuels, and if we could save energy in those, then there would be a tremendous reduction, and the demand for fossil fuel energy would go down. That's such a key important area, and I wish that people would do it, especially owners, facility managers, and the government, to create that incentive to retrofit all kinds of buildings.
Thank you. I think
I totally agree. That's where we see the most emission savings. That's historically where we've seen the most emissions reductions, even in Massachusetts. We do have, Massachusetts is actually #1 in the nation for our energy efficiency program. And exactly, yeah, clean water. With my coworkers are part of a 12-year campaign to fix the Mass Save program, because it doesn't even address people who rent their apartments. And the commercial and industrial sectors basically just only do it when the government completely covers the bill. So I totally agree we need to do way more. The whole nation needs to do way more. Massachusetts being first is, kind of disgusting in my eyes.
Yes, you have a question?
It is a question, also a comment. I'm very concerned that when I hear about the Green New Deal, I have not heard anyone make a connection between Pentagon use of fuel and of the climate warming. For instance, if you go online, you'll find various articles. For instance, the claim the Pentagon is the largest single contributor to climate change in the world. In 2013, the Pentagon fuel consumption was 80% of the total use of fuel by the federal government. I'm concerned that we make regulations, we propose deals, but will it apply to our federal agencies?
Craig, do you have something you want to?
Yeah, just briefly, so that's totally right. I do want to also acknowledge the Pentagon actually has done a lot of investments in renewable energy, but it's no question that their budget is very bloated, and everything I've heard about the Green New Deal and the conversation I've had is very much a need to slim down that budget unambiguously. I mean, that's a huge portion of government spending that is discretionary, and we don't, that's not where we need to put our resources right now. We've got limited resources, unless you believe in monetary theory, which says we just print all the money we need, which is definitely a school of thought about the Green New Deal. But I think definitely cutting the military is going to be a necessary part for me of the Green New Deal.
Westwood Environmental Action Committee and South Shore Recycling Cooperative. I also was spent a few hours in the pokey doing a civil disobedience right down the street here to protest the pipeline, which that got built, but others did. That really, I think it really, hundreds of us got out and over time got arrested and tried to disrupt it. But anyway, the point I want to make tonight is not about that. This is very ambitious, and we really need ambitious because we do have an urgent problem, as you stated. We need a culture shift. One thing that I have not seen in the Green New Deal is the addressing of consumption. I did a talk the other night. The EPA a few years ago looked at consumption, and it turns out that that contributes about 40%, a little more, to our greenhouse gas emissions, but most of it is emitted elsewhere because our consumer products require huge amounts of energy, even paper, to manufacture. And if we don't address that aspect of it, then we're not going to be solving the problem. Has that come up at all in crafting this thing, or is that going to be addressed? How will that be go?
So I don't know if any of the youth want to answer that, but if they step up, I will stop talking. But I think the short version is, and feel free to step up.
So I don't think with any of the research that we've done in terms of this presentation a lot on the Green New Deal. I would love to, if either of you would love to say anything about consumerism. But in terms of just youth, we have a lot of, there's lots of things on social media going around actually right now about single-use plastic cups and like buying straws that are, you don't have to constantly using the same, I'm sorry, the English is failing me right now. But a lot of young people are trying to engage in using paper bags. I know, it's not better, but it's not better, but the fact that there is some sort of trying to educate in terms of like, people are doing basic education, like, oh, plastic bags are bad. Paper bags should be good, right? And then people being like, no, they're not. They're like, oh, instead of just being like, I don't care. So there is actual trying to educate yourself within the youth instead of just being like, oh, we're all gonna die anyway, who cares?
You need to ban Christmas.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You have to ban Christmas. Cups. You gotta ban
The
Christmas.
cups are gonna kill us all. But would either of you like to say anything in terms of that?
Sure. Go ahead, Kyle.
Kyle's gonna say something now. This is Kyle.
How's everybody doing? My name is Hal Richard, and I am very inspired by the youth that spoke today. I helped them with their presentation, but really, I'm really excited just to be in step with them and support what they're doing. In my understanding of the Green New Deal and my understanding of how we're framing this conversation is about the injustice of consumption. Not necessarily that we individually are consuming more plastic, more oil, more gas, but that it's being done inequally, and there's certain parties that have power and access to those resources that we do not. And while I can say you're not using a light bulb, you're using your car more, really that is a argument going this way. We need to go this way with the argument. And we have to make sure that people know, those people out there know, that that's something that we're considering with Green New Deal is putting justice on top of environmentalism.
I bought a bicycle helmet last week because I needed to replace the one that I crashed. And I got the bicycle helmet home and I took it out of the cardboard box on the plastic wrap and the instruction booklet and everything. I took it out to the recycle bin and tore everything apart, put it in there, and I'm like, I'm being a good citizen here. And I was like, no. Why is there so much packaging? So I think the consumption is the thing. Like, again, if we're thinking we should have recycling and pick up twice, we should be every week instead of every other week. But there's a problem when you're filling a giant bin full of cardboard and paper and bottles and stuff because you're consuming so much that we kind of get caught up in this virtuous idea. But it would be better if we were doing a lot less.
I actually talk on this one too. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. And I think Sunrise is actually doing the right answer to this, because talking about consumption, talking about consumers' behavior as if that is causing climate change is a corporate tactic that the fossil fuel industry, that industrial polluters use to basically shift the blame from them to us. How many?
Something on that real quick. So we were yesterday, Extinction Rebellion went into the LDC gas forum, which is like a gas industry schmooze fest that's happening downtown. And actually on Monday, one of our members sort of walked into the session, and they were talking about, and the session was about what to do about climate protesters when they're coming protesting. It was a keynote. And that was one of the tactics that they raised, is specifically that they were using that tactic to try to talk about, like, oh, you need to, you're using too many plastic cups, you need to recycle. And then that was going to shift the focus away and blame it all on us and not on the industry.
Yeah, and my last point is, just look at your own lives. How many options did you have when you bought food, when you took your car to work, when you did anything, access the internet? How many options did you have to ethically consume every little part of your consumption stream? We don't have an option as consumers. So that's why Sunrise is flipping the script and talking about corporate influence at the top of the presentation.
We all know that, I feel like when I was growing up, we had the same dishwasher for 50 years, and then when they started to break down, we had to buy the very days. So is there anything in the Green New Deal that, forces the corporations to make better dishwashers so that it might break within 20 years? So, if it doesn't break within 20 years, they don't have to recycle it, but if it does break within 20 years, they're responsible for recycling it or something. I don't know what the solution would be, but it does seem like they make things worse and worse on purpose.
I can't speak to that because I think the Green New Deal is still being formed, but I would again urge people to think about the local and state level. There is a bill in the state legislature that would require recyclable, and help me out here, Claire, recyclable and compostable packaging that would require producers to take back not just mattresses and paint, but their packaging. I would encourage people to think about what could be done locally, what could be done at the state level, and also don't assume that someone else has the answers. There's a lot of wisdom right in this room. I was not joking when I said, people come to me in Newton, hey Emily, do this, do this, do this. I'm like, okay, help me, go research it for me. So really I would encourage, did I mention what frickin' Massachusetts? Let's figure it out, and then you look at how change happens. Often it's a state, local, city by local city. We've got 118 plastic bag bans. We're going to get it done statewide. It might be 350 out of 351 before the state legislature acts, but it's going to happen, and state by state also. So we could try to figure out some solution here. I don't know what the solution is to having better dishwashers, but there's got to be a solution, and then others would copy us.
There's repair clinics where you can go and bring appliances and things, and people will show you how to fix your own appliances. I don't know if they thought those around here,
Extended producer responsibility, that was what you're talking about. There's a paper and packaging bill, but it really would work much better on a national level. So I would, if there's any way to communicate that to the Green New Deal people, that should be incorporated into the whole policy. I think that would make a big difference, because that's the only way you're going to get corporations to take responsibility for the products that they tempt us with.
Okay, so we're past 9 o'clock, and I think we might maybe take one more question from the audience. Somebody who hasn't spoken before, back from the back.
So I'm Kristen. I am with Boston Architectural College. I'm the Vice President of the student chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. I'm a landscape architect major. But I spent a few years in interior design prior to changing my major. And I actually was invited here by Sunrise. So for you guys in the front, I met somebody last week at an advocacy mixer at Boston Architecture. You guys probably don't know me, but it's someone else. The question I kind of had was for everyone on the stage. I think that architects, we are part of the problem. I think that we've been a part of the problem for a really long time, socially, politically, environmentally. And Seaport, in my opinion, is kind of a disaster. and a lot of the things that are being built lately are disasters. So kind of the question, a few of my questions have already been answered. So my last question is kind of what suggestions do you guys have for me as an architect? Because I'm still an architect, I just major in landscape because it focuses on environment. So, yeah.
So, the question is, what advice or what recommendations would you have for architects? Because architecture, built environment is a large part of the contribution to the problem. So, if you're an architect, what can we do to improve?
So I see this in both my day job at CRWA and also as a city councilor. For cities and towns, we rely a lot on consultants and architects, whether it's new schools, buildings, so forth. And there's this chicken and egg thing, where if the client doesn't ask for, green infrastructure, more stormwater, more stringent energy, efficiency, then the architect isn't going to offer it. Like, I want to keep getting hired. I'm not going to pester them. So I would say, use your voice on the inside to really encourage your clients to go above and beyond when it comes to climate resilience or climate change. This, again, back to holding people accountable. Speaking of the Seaport, climate resilience in 2019 is still a voluntary checklist in the city of Boston for new development. That is outrageous. Folks might have seen that story in the Boston Globe about the new building going up in the Chinatown with a glass exterior. I mean, it's outrageous with everything we know to see that. So if you live in Boston, call Marty Walsh, right? I mean, he's got all the power. The city council has virtually no power over development. It's a little known fact. And then at CWA, we work quite a bit with landscape architects to install green infrastructure and better stormwater so that we are not only cleaning the Charles River more, but also protecting against the flooding that we're already seeing is going to be coming more and more. So architects can save the world, absolutely. All of us have a role to save the world, but architects, absolutely.
Yeah, I would just again turn that back to the movement question is, either get involved in the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, and push for better policy changes within there, or create a new non-greenwashed green architect society that you can recruit others to join. But also just get involved with existing organizations, because again, I think a lot of us think what can I do as an individual within my professional capacity, but this isn't a problem we can solve individually, this is a problem we have to solve collectively. And so when we need you in Sunrise or in 350 or Clean Water or Charles River Watershed or Extinction Rebellion, join an organization, get involved politically in your time outside of work, do what you can as a student or as a person in your workplace, but we need you all in the movement. We need to be taking to the streets, pushing for change. And it helps for people to know that I'm an architect and I'm marching. I'm an architect and I care. It makes it feel more real when it's not just people like me who are paid to do this work, but people who have a real job in another profession but are out there because they care about the future of life on Earth.
Thank you. So I want to thank everyone here, and also to talk about getting involved. So this was organized, we formed this Charles River Green Coalition, but it was really organized by a progressive Dedham Westwood Norwood chapter. And the people in the steering committee decided that we wanted to make climate change a big issue and put on an event so that we could have a discussion about it. So I'd encourage anyone who's interested in becoming involved with Progressive Massachusetts and Progressive Dedham Westwood Norwood, please reach out to Leslie, Ms. Granius, and myself, and we'll be doing more things like this in the future. And the Charles River Green Coalition will be meeting in 2 weeks at the Westwood Public Library to take some of these ideas and turn them into action. So there's some of the ideas we thought about are, there are towns like Westwood has recently passed a community electricity aggregation. Many other towns have done that, but if you come together as a regional group, we could talk about these things and say, okay, well maybe Dover should do that next, or somebody from Dover could ask, what's Needham doing, what's Dedham doing? So we're looking to form a regional group that would share these best practices and ideas, and find ways to take action, like everybody on the stage has been doing in their capacity. So I want to thank you all, and Leslie, do you have anything else to know?
Yes, so Progressive Mass, Progressive Norwood is involved in the interrelationship among all these issues. We talked about how healthcare, economic justice, social justice, all these things are implicated. We need to address all of them. That's what we try to do. And that's where this idea for a Green New Deal town hall came from. But I want to thank the students who spoke so articulately. I think this angles for all of this, but I think if we all work together, we can really make things happen. As one of the students said, or maybe more than one, we have more power than we think. We're the 99%, so we can really make things happen. Please take a look at this insert in your program. It provides the details of this meeting that we're hoping to have in a couple of weeks where we go on with this program. This is just the beginning of what we're hoping to do. It isn't just, we've come here tonight and this is it. We want to start actually moving in the direction of holding our local government and our state government responsible for what happens in Massachusetts and beyond. So thank you.
I was originally in the program, we were going to play the video View from the Future. And do people want to see that, or maybe people want to get home? There's actually a big problem happening right now. I was checking, and the Bruins are down 2-0. So I don't know if going home could help.